that Atlanta Falcons radio show. So get up, get out, and get something. Get in the zone. We live on the DT. Tune in, cause we about to blow like TNT. Falcons Central Radio show. Gonna be berserk, you heard. We ain't even tripping, catching y'all slipping. What's good, man? On the Pro Football Central Radio Network, hosted by Aaron Freeman and Scott Carasik. What? This right here is a good present for you. Enjoy my presence like I was Santa Claus, man. Chillin', doing it.
Well, welcome back to another episode of Falcons Central Radio. Since we're facing the Bengals this week, on ESPN we're going to be facing the Bengals. Preseason, that's what it is, but we've got Sean O'Donnell joining us. Welcome, Sean.
Hey, guys, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
It's awesome having you on. So yeah, as far as matchups are going, what is something that you want to see out of the Bengals this week against the Falcons?
Well, we're not going to see a lot of the starters this week, it being the first week of the preseason. We're all well aware of that. Week one of the preseason is a prelude to the rest of the preseason. Coaches get to look at the depth of the teams and everything, and I think that's the biggest thing to look at right now. I'm really not looking at, what the starters are going to be doing, not looking for, individual performances from some of the guys who we expect to break out this year. I'm really looking at is how the certain positions play out in the backup positions. The Falcons are a very deep team, and I think it's a great matchup with the Bengals and the Falcons in week one, just because they're two playoff teams from a year ago. They're both younger teams relatively, just have a lot of talent, and they're both very deep in the roster. So basically what I'm looking for is the Bengals 2s against the Falcons 2s, the Bengals 3s against the Falcons 3s, so we can see just how well these guys that are deep on the roster show up and make a push for a roster spot.
Okay. You talked about some of the Bengals 2s going against the Falcons 2s, and I'll have to be honest, some of the players the Bengals drafted this past April were players I was really high on, guys like Tyler Eifert, Giovanni Bernard, Margus Hunt, and Sean Porter. Could you, and I know Sean Williams is also in that mix, and I know some of these guys are expected in Cincinnati to have big roles this year, and so we'll get opportunity to see some of these guys this upcoming preseason game. So could you give us an idea of what we're expecting out of some of these guys this year, and how they've been so far in camp?
Yeah, the guys that you touched on have been, the early guys, obviously, Tyler Eifert, nothing but incredible praise coming out of OTAs and training camp from these guys. They're, as advertised, doing everything that's expected of them as, first and early second round draft picks. We're going to see a lot of them, I believe, against the Falcons this coming Thursday. And, I don't think we're going to see them really with the first team. I think, you're going to see Jermaine Gresham and Jeffrey Ellis out there for a couple reps with the first team, getting the veterans in and out really quick. And then I think when the second teams come in, that's when we're going to see a lot more of Tyler Eifert and Giovanni Bernard. They're both expected to produce, instantly, basically, from the offense. The nice thing is, the depth with the Bengals is that it's not a necessity for them to produce right away. They can be groomed for a little while because they are sitting behind some savvy veterans on the depth chart. So, we're really looking forward to seeing what these guys can do in the actual NFL game situation. And we're going to start to see the growing picture of that against the Falcons on Thursday. As far as the guys on the defensive side of the ball, I don't know how much of Margus Hunt we're going to see. He is very much of a project player. We haven't seen much of him even during training camp right now. He's been kind of working on the side with positional coaches. He's really trying to get his fundamentals down. He's working on his technique, and I don't think he's quite ready to step in at the defensive end position yet. He's more suited for special teams at this point. But I think we'll see a lot of Sean Williams, safety out of Georgia. he is in the running to start opposite Reggie Nelson in the Bengals defensive secondary this year. And he should be running with either the 2s or the 3s after Georgia Loca and Taylor Mays get their shares with the 1s. So, watch for Sean Williams at the safety position for Cincinnati. Falcons are deep on the offensive side of the ball at wide receiver. So I'm looking for some great matchups with the Falcons receivers against the Bengals secondary there. Sean Porter, you'll probably see come in with the 2s and 3s at the linebacker position. Not sure yet, but I believe they're going to start him out on the weak side and see what he can do there. Nice thing with Sean Porter is he's rather versatile. He played the joker position in college. In the NFL, that could translate to either playing the weak side or the strong side position, depending on how the Bengals develop him. He'll be intriguing to watch, but he's another guy like Marcus Hunt that's more of a developmental kind of guy. He's not going to see a lot of reps early on.
No.
That sounds good to me. Marcus Hunt is a unique guy because I like seeing what he could do in college. I like seeing what he could do in college as a 26-year-old going against 22-year-olds. But it's gonna be nice to see him go against actual talent. Let's just hope he doesn't end up like Jamal Anderson, the bad one. Yeah, you don't want him playing defensive end. Now, as far as your offense, you're not going to have A.J. Green. How do you think that'll affect the game plan early on?
Well, not having A.J. Green, there's kind of some silver lining that goes with that. A.J. Green, he's a third-year guy right now, but the way he has produced over his first couple of years, it almost seems like he's a 5-year veteran at this point with, his knowledge of the Bengals system and, his production throughout his first 2 years in the league. And he's a veteran. This preseason isn't going to hurt A.J. Green. He doesn't need really to develop. If it does anything, it just kind of pushes back his the time that he has to develop. To get his timing back, basically with Andy Dalton. What we're looking for really is to see how guys can step up in A.J. Green's absence. Look for a guy like Marvin Jones, who was a 5th-round draft pick last year out of Cal. He's a speedy guy, and he kind of started to develop some good chemistry with Andy Dalton towards the end of the season last year. And I believe the Bengals will be playing him on the outside, probably opposite Mohamed Sanu, who was last year's 3rd-round selection in A.J. Green's absence. So, look for, as far as the starters go, maybe we'll see some early matchups. I'm not sure which of the Falcons are starting, but if you have a guy like Asante Samuel out there getting some reps, I could certainly see him going up against Marvin Jones. That'd be a very interesting matchup to watch, kind of a second-year guy who's up and coming against a savvy veteran like that.
All right. As most people listening are aware, the Falcons and Bengals have been practicing together today and yesterday in preparation for this week's preseason game. And Sean, what are some of the things that you've been hearing about coming out from these joint practices for either team?
Well, I've heard some interesting things coming out of the Bengals and Falcons joint practice. One thing I've heard, I've heard actually a positive and a negative for the Bengals on the defensive side of the ball, I guess, and that could be the same thing for the Falcons on the offensive side of the ball. From what I've heard, the Bengals defensive line has been getting the best of the Falcons offensive line as they've been going on right now. Apparently they've been giving Matt Ryan a little bit of trouble getting through that offensive line of the Falcons. However, Matt Ryan, when he does have time to throw, he's been absolutely burning the Bengals secondary with those great receivers that he has on the outside. And I heard that Matt Ryan went on a long drive against the Bengals defense, went 6 for 7, scoring a touchdown against a Bengals defense that wasn't too shabby last year, finished 6th overall in the NFL. So they're both taking their licks, and and the same thing goes on the opposite side. I've heard good things about the Bengals offense, about certain players, kind of breaking off some nice plays. But then again, I've heard the Falcons cornerbacks have had a little bit of their way with Andy Dalton. I know, I'm trying to think of who it was, but somebody got a pick 6 going on Andy Dalton earlier today that I read, but I can't remember who it was, unfortunately, right now. But
it was Robert Alford.
Okay, yeah, Robert Alford, that's who it was. Yep. And, it's great because these are two very talented teams, in my opinion. They're both playoff teams. I think they're both going to be playoff teams again this year. And the things that I'm hearing right now are completely back and forth. You hear, something in favor of the Bengals, then you hear something in favor of the Falcons, and that just goes on and on. So, it really looks like these are very evenly matched teams, and they're really doing what they're supposed to do, and they're it doesn't seem like either of these teams are behind the curve right now. It seems like they're coming out and they'll be ready to go come week 1 of the regular season.
You talked about Andy Dalton having some issues. I know everybody's thinking about this upcoming season as sort of a make or break season for Dalton. Do you think it's that, and what kind of expectations do you have on Dalton going into this year?
Well, Dalton's entering his 3rd season, which, as we all know, that's a very, very crucial year for a young quarterback. His rookie season, very temperate expectations of a quarterback. In the 2nd year, he's kind of expected to grow and make some strides, which he did do last year. But his 3rd season is when he's really supposed to emerge as a solid quarterback. If he can, then, a team knows that they have a franchise quarterback possibly. If he can't, the team starts to reassess things. Andy Dalton is, he's kind of in a situation where I don't think it's a make or break year for him. I think it would take some kind of really drastic regression on his part for the Bengals to look, in other avenues in the quarterback position, whether it's, in the early rounds of the draft next year or trade or something like that. I think Andy Dalton for the Bengals could go on, another route basically. It is, however, a very important year for Andy Dalton to show that he's capable of being a franchise quarterback. Aside from A.J. Green, Mohamed Sanu, and Gresham, the Bengals added a lot of talent this year, in Tyler Eifert, Gio Bernard on the offensive side of the ball. There's really a common phrase that's uttered right now is there's no excuses for Dalton this year, and that's exactly the case. He has his 3rd year with the same offensive coordinator in the same system, and now he has all of the weapons surrounding him to get the job done. So this is the year where he needs to make better decisions in the pocket and, find the open guy and, get the ball down the field. And it's like I said, a make or break year for him, but it's very important and very telling for the future of the Cincinnati Bengals.
Okay. You talked about guys that the Bengals have added. One player that interests me because I think when he was signed by the Bengals, a lot of people weren't quite sure how he'd exactly fit with what they did, and that was James Harrison. How are the Bengals looking or planning to use him, and is he, kind of meshing with what they're trying to do defensively?
Well, the Bengals will be using James Harrison as a strong side linebacker in their 4-3 defensive scheme. As we know, James Harrison's coming from Pittsburgh, where he's played his career as an outside linebacker in a 3-4 scheme. The nice thing about Harrison's transition is for what he needs to do on the strong side of the Cincinnati Bengals scheme, there's not a lot of difference between what he is doing now compared to what he did in Pittsburgh. The biggest hurdle for him is to get the terminology down because it's completely different defense. I mean, he's a lucky guy going between 2 of the better defensive coordinators in the league, from Dick LeVeaux in Pittsburgh to Mike Zimmer in Cincinnati. But each of those guys have a completely different structure as far as, the terminology of their defenses go, and that's going to be his biggest hurdle to be successful with the Bengals. He's 35 years old. We'll see if an old dog can learn new tricks, I guess, with the Bengals this year as he looks to pick up that 3-3 or that 4-3 scheme. But I don't think he'll be an every down guy for the Bengals. They're rather deep at the linebacker position, and I think Harrison will be kind of a situational player. It will kind of, keep him fresh throughout the year because he's up there in years. But, he'll be a solid contributor on the strong side. I don't think you're going to see the explosive James Harrison that you did a couple years back in Pittsburgh, but I do believe that he'll be able to serve his purpose and help the Bengals improve on defense.
Okay. You talked about the Bengals defensive line getting the better of the Falcons offensive line. As probably most people are aware, the Bengals defensive line is sort of the strength of their defense, and it really starts up front with their ability to get pressure with four guys. And over the years, it seems that the Bengals secondary has been a little inconsistent. They've gotten inconsistent play at the safety position. You mentioned earlier they added Sean Williams to try to help them out there. Last year they drafted Dre Kirkpatrick with their first round pick, and he got hurt. He was basically supposed to replace Jonathan Joseph. How is Kirkpatrick looking in his this summer, and is he going to be projected to be a guy that can really improve that Bengals secondary?
There's a good amount of news coming from Dre Kirkpatrick out of Bengals camp so far this year. Basically, he's healthy, which is great. This is kind of a do-over rookie season for Dre Kirkpatrick because he really didn't get many reps last season. There's been good news about Dre Kirkpatrick coming out of camp. He's been making plays. He's been very solid in coverage, especially on the outside, especially even against speedier guys like Marvin Jones, who I was talking about earlier. And he's actually been very vocal in camp this year. He's if you're sitting on the sidelines of Bengals camp, it's very easy to tell when Dre Kirkpatrick is frustrated at himself because he's not taking it easy on himself, and he's more than muttered a couple explicit words from time to time. I guess we'll put it that way. But he's taking it seriously. He's healthy again, and he stated over the offseason that his goal is to start in the Cincinnati Bengals defense. I don't believe that he will right away. Leon Hall is the incumbent starter, and Terrence Newman had a terrific bounce-back year under Mike Zimmer last season. Those guys are going to remain the starters for this season for the most part. However, I do believe that Dre Kirkpatrick will start to share time with Newman at that second cornerback position as the season goes on, and I think that he has what it takes to be the long-term starter opposite Leon Hall for that Bengals secondary, just as they intended when they drafted him a year ago.
So no Pac-Man Jones?
Well, Pac-Man Jones, he's going to be around. Pac-Man Jones, he's the slot guy. He's going to stay in the slot. That's his forte right there. You look at guys like Leon Hall and Terrence Newman and Dre Kirkpatrick, and those guys are set up for the outside. Whereas Adam Jones, he's a shiftier corner. I mean, as you can tell with his prowess returning punts. It all relies on his ankles and his great cuts, and that's why he's such a successful slot corner. And he'll stay in that position right there. He'll be the number 3, the slot guy, and as long as he's in Cincinnati. And then I just think it's basically going to be Leon Hall on one side, and then Kirkpatrick's going to start sharing time with Newman on the other side as Kirkpatrick learns the defense. And because Newman's getting a little bit older, he might get a little bit gassed if he gets too many reps over there.
Okay. So as far as I always wonder this because you guys have some really good linebackers. I know we talked about Jerome Harrison for a minute, but going more towards Ray Maluga, Dante Mock. How's the situation between Mock, Maluga, Burfict looking? Who is going to start out of those guys?
Well, as far as the rest of the linebackers go, you're always going to have Vontae Burfict as one of the starters right now. I mean, he absolutely solidified his role with an unprecedented and unexpected rookie season last year. And he's projected to be the starter at will linebacker on the weak side right now, with Maluga projected to start in the middle. And there's still some ongoing speculation about if it's going to actually stay that way, because Vontae Burfict he's best suited to be a middle linebacker. You want a weak side linebacker in that defensive scheme that the Bengals run to be a little more athletic, a little quicker than Vontae Burfict is. Burfict is, he's just an absolute, stacked big body to keep in the middle. But for being such a big guy, he's athletic enough to be able to transition out to the weak side. So there's a lot of speculation going on as if you kind of move Maluga out of there, move Vontae Burfict over into the middle, and then you bring in a more athletic guy on the weak side. Actually, another undrafted free agent that the Bengals picked up from a year ago, who's actually really impressing, is a guy by the name of Emmanuel Lemur. He's a prototypical weak side linebacker. He is very quick. He's a little more slender than Burfict is, and he excels in pass coverage, which are the things that you really want to look for in a good weak side linebacker. So a lot of Bengals fans really do want to see more of a Lemur on the weak side, Burfict in the middle, and then Maualuga, if you remember, he actually played his first couple of years with the Bengals on the strong side, which is where James Harrison is right now. And people are really looking for maybe a rotation between Harrison and Maualuga on that strong side because, as I mentioned earlier, Harrison's up there in age, and he may not be an every-down player at this time. And Maualuga played much better on the strong side in his earlier years than he has been in the middle right now. So, like I said, as it sits right now, you have Burfict on the weak side, Maualuga in the middle, and Harrison on the strong side. But throughout the rest of training camp and the preseason, that may get shifted around before the season starts or maybe early into the regular season. I guess that's a happy problem that the Bengals have, that their linebackers are so versatile that they can use them like chess pieces and move them around to create the best matchups.
All right, Sean, we'll get you out of here on this question. Preseason is one of those things where a lot of times it's not about the veterans. It's about which young guys are going to step up and make plays. And so from what you're seeing and what you're hearing in camp, is there one person on the Bengals, some young unknown guy that we might see in this upcoming preseason game kind of have a coming out party?
Yeah, actually, what I would say is look for this year's selection in the 6th round for the Bengals. His name is Kobe Hamilton. He's a wide receiver out of Arkansas. And throughout rookie minicamp, OTAs, mandatory minicamp, and beginning of training camp, Kobe Hamilton has absolutely impressed his teammates and the coaching staff. Offensive coordinator Jay Gruden and head coach Marvin Lewis have had absolute glowing reports about Hamilton, and he's basically producing and learning the offense so much faster than they anticipated, especially for a 6th round selection. And, a lot of people seem to think that he's already performed so well, he might actually be very close to being a lock at one of the 6 wide receivers that the Bengals intend to keep this year. So with that amount of high praise surrounding Kobe Hamilton, I would say watch for him as the 2nd and 3rd string offenses of Cincinnati come out onto the field this coming Thursday against the Falcons.
Okay. Well, Sean, it was great having you on. We'll hope to get you on maybe later, since you are a proud member of the Pro Football Central family. You also write for Bleacher Report and Yahoo. Is there any other thing you'd like to plug before we let you go?
Well, if anybody's listening, they want to, find me and chat me up with some football, you can find me on Twitter at Sean O'Donnell NFL. And, my radio show is on the Pro Football Central network, just like yours, Bengals Central. We're on Twitter as well at Bengals Central. And so check out the great things happening at Pro Football Central and my show, Bengals Central, and find me on Twitter. And thanks a lot for having me on, guys. It was a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
All right, Sean.
It was awesome having you on.
The real heart and soul of the Pro Football Central Network.
Cigar fans, check out fifthdowncigar.com and enter the coupon code PFC to get 10% off your order. Lots of nice high-end cigars. That's fifthdowncigar.com. Enter the code PFC for 10% off your order.
All right, welcome back to the Falcons Central Radio Show. I am Aaron Freeman, joined with Scott Carasik. We just had a nice talk with Sean O'Donnell about the Cincinnati Bengals, and we talked quite a bit about the Bengals, and I guess maybe we should focus on the team that we're here to represent, the Falcons.
It probably is a good idea to represent the Falcons. But I like getting an idea of what the opponent can do. And since it's the Bengals, there's no bad blood,
I agree with you.
Yeah. They stole a really good defensive coordinator after 2007, but I mean, there's only so much you can do.
Well, there wasn't a whole lot of good things on that 2017, so, the fact that he got away, I don't blame him. Because it was pretty much like rats leaving a sinking ship. So he's in a, I don't know if he's in a better place, but he's certainly better for it.
Whenever I hear somebody say he's in a better place, I always think they died, though.
Well, a few years ago, going to Cincinnati would have been like dying, but, they've turned things around.
All because of Marvin Lewis.
Yeah.
He's a heck of a coach.
They started drafting well. They got a lot of young talent on that team. Yeah. They actually got a scouting department now that they didn't have, for most of their, 40 years of existence. But yeah, the Falcons are going to be playing the Bengals on Thursday night. Hard Knocks is premiering tonight, so we will try to cut this show a little short so people can watch their Hard Knocks. And I doubt we will see the Falcons tonight, but we will probably see them next week's episode. But, it's a good time. I'm anxious for this opening preseason game. It's nice to see, we hear about all these guys doing well in practice. We hear about some of these guys not doing well in practice. And it's nice to get your eyes on them in actual game situations because that's where the money is made.
Exactly. Now, let's just hope that they understand that and they don't screw it up because I don't want to see a team I don't want to see the team just look horrible this week, especially with the Mike Johnson injury and Lamar Holmes having to go in and take care of him. And you could tell, apparently you could tell in practice that Lamar Holmes was gassed from earlier in the day because they were working him hard. Obviously they weren't expecting what was going to happen. You don't expect a guy to go down with a bad leg injury like that. Mm-hmm. Well, Holmes has to get it together. Otherwise, I do think Ryan Schrader could take his job.
Yeah, I didn't see a whole lot of Valdosta State. I don't think anybody outside the city of Valdosta, Georgia, saw a whole lot of Valdosta State this year. But I did see one Valdosta State game, and I was very impressed with Ryan Schrader. He's not a guy who has a whole lot of experience, but you hear a lot of stories about those guys that kind of, don't play football until late in their high school career, or he may have not even played until he got to college. I can't recall. But, he's kind of a late bloomer type of guy, and, he's got raw athleticism, and he's a big physical guy. He plays hard. He's mean. He's all those types of things, and the Falcons have shown that they're not afraid. They're not going to always play a guy just because he's a higher draft pick. The best man's going to win it. And if Schrader outproduces Holmes this summer, then it's certainly a possibility that he could win the starting gig.
It's definitely a possibility. And that would be horrible, absolutely horrible for Holmes. Because it's pretty much, you're done. You're gone. As far as guard is concerned, I still am waiting to see what they do there. Maybe they really like Garrett Reynolds. I'm not a fan. So maybe he can surprise me. Maybe he can pull a Sam Baker on me this year. Well, because halfway through last year, I was like, man, if this is the Sam Baker that we were supposed to have drafted, I would have given him a 5-year contract before.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's like, Yeah.
That's
like, why did we give him this much money with one good year? But still, apparently he's showing out and he's busting his balls to be even better than he was last year. He could improve. Sounds painful, and he could improve, but if he's better than he was last year, no one's going to complain.
Nope.
He was solid last year. So if you can go from solid to potentially a Pro Bowler, I'm not gonna complain.
No.
That's what we want. We want a guy who can go to the Pro Bowl protecting Matt Ryan's ass. Literally.
Okay. Okay. All right, yeah.
I mean, yeah. So
I'll go with you on that one, sure. It's gonna be interesting, we talked to Sean about, we're not going to see a whole lot of the starters, and that probably goes for both teams. I think, we'll see the Falcons starters for a series or two. Offensive line will probably play a little bit longer, the starting five. That's traditionally how they've kind of handled it in past preseasons. So it's going to be, that's going to be one of the things that we're looking at, because pretty much all the skill positions, Matt Ryan, wide receivers, tight ends, running back, at least as far as the starters goes, we're pretty much, secure at those spots, where I guess we're just trying to see which young guys step up at those spots. Dominique Davis, Chase Kaufman, Toy Lolo, Martell Moore, etc. But, the offensive line is the one question mark for the Falcons offense as we're talking about going into the regular season. And it's going to be interesting to see how they handle that formidable Bengals front, even if they only see them for one series. It'll certainly, if they don't look too good, it'll certainly have people pulling their hair out on Twitter. But if they do well, then, you probably won't hear the opposite reaction. But that's the way Twitter works. Tends to be very negative.
That's exactly how Twitter works. You get the ridiculous reactions from everybody.
Football fans, check out ProFootballCentral.com for all the latest NFL news and analysis. Also, check out the very popular Pro Football Central radio network for awesome NFL talk around the league. Go to ProFootballCentral.com. ProFootballCentral.com.
All right. We're here joined by Ethan Hammerman. He's a writer for Sports Reel Boston. He also is a cohort of Scott's at Draft Falcons. And he's here to join us and talk a little bit more about fantasy football. I know people are gearing up for their drafts in the next few weeks, so we want to make sure everybody who's listening is well informed. I definitely want to be well informed. So how you doing, Ethan?
It's been a tiring day. The fantasy app that I helped to launch, Fanium, just launched today, and so I have been up for far too long, troubleshooting and just making sure everything is good on that end. But yeah, you gotta love working in fantasy football. There's nothing better. So it's been awesome all day. It's been great to see people interact with the app and sort of see what's going on there. And it's also fun to see what players are going high in our scoring system, what guys are slipping. And crazy to see how the landscape's changing constantly in fantasy with all these injuries and all these ACLs.
Could you tell us a little bit more about the Fanium app for people who are not aware?
Yeah, so basically it's a totally free, totally mobile fantasy football app and platform for iOS and Android. So if you have an iPhone that basically was bought after 2009 or an Android that runs Ice Cream Sandwich or above, you're good to go. And it's just a better way to play fantasy football. It's just easier to get your friends to play. The draft screen's a lot better. You can play it anywhere you want. You can do everything from your phone. It's just a better way to play fantasy football. At least we think so. And thus far today, we've had a lot of experts and a lot of people interact with the app. They all seem to like it a lot. So hopefully we can just keep momentum going forward and get a lot of people to use it and get a lot of people to like it and continue to build up and make our brand even bigger. Today's been great, though, just seeing everyone jump in, chime in on Twitter and on Facebook and on other social media sites and talk about how much they're enjoying the app. So that's been great.
All right, I'm going to have to check that out. So, I've been starting to lock down on these fantasy drafts. Ethan, you're from the New England area. I'm thinking about drafting Shane Vereen this year for one of my fantasy teams. Is he poised for a breakout year?
I'm a fan of Shane Vereen's, for sure. I really like what he brings to the table in terms of versatility. His play style actually reminds me a little bit of Brian Westbrook, the former Philadelphia Eagles running back, in terms of his ability to get out of the backfield, make plays in space. The big question about Vereen is he's inconsistent. He had a couple of huge games last year. People forget against the Jets he had an 86-yard catch-and-run touchdown pass. And he actually, the funny thing is that early last year, he was a bit of a goal line back. He got a bunch of short carries for touchdowns. So his production's been a bit inconsistent. He'll go on these long, prolonged bases in time where he just doesn't produce at all. And it'll be interesting to see what he does this year without Danny Woodhead there to sort of supplement him. I think he's a good pick. I think he might go a little bit high for my blood. I've seen him go in round 5, round 6 in a lot of drafts. I think he's more valuable in PPR than in other fantasy formats. So in PPR, maybe late round 6, but otherwise I think he's a good value in the 7th or 8th round. I think that's probably a good place to pick him up because Stephen Ridley, by all accounts, still the main back, and actually the Patriots have been using him a lot more in passing formations this preseason and this training camp. So he could see a lot more upper speeds to catch the ball out of the backfield. So Vereen might not get quite the boost that people expect. I don't think he's the same player as Danny Woodhead. I think that they have different roles. And I think it's just smart to be a little bit conservative with buying Vereen right now.
Well, I didn't need a whole lot of...
Well, yeah, you've been liking him since before he got drafted. Now, as far as certain guys to watch for in the early rounds, would you take, since Fannium's only 8-person leagues, would you say with the scoring system y'all use that a guy like Julio Jones, Roddy White, would they be great picks early, or then is it more of a standard style scoring system?
I think that they go around the same in both leagues. I would say Julio Jones in our scoring system is a solid second-round pick, and Roddy White probably goes in the 3rd, just because they're going to get a lot of catches, they're going to get a lot of yards after the catch, and they have a good quarterback getting the ball. So I think that Julio in standard is probably rated a little bit higher than Roddy right now, but in standard I'm usually getting Julio pretty comfortably in the 3rd, so he's probably rated a little bit higher in Fannium's league because Fannium tends to devalue running backs just a bit, so they don't have a lot of receptions. Just for context, the top 5 players by projections in Fannium's scoring system are Adrian Peterson, Calvin Johnson, Cam Newton, Aaron Rodgers, and Arian Foster. So there's a good diversity of positions, and it's sort of based on a whole bunch of factors. And you'll notice with those 5 players that they all play extremely differently, which is very interesting. So I would say that Julio is probably rated a little bit higher in Fannium's scoring system than in others, and Roddy's probably about the same in both, maybe a little higher in Fannium's just because of Julio being raised up as well.
Okay. You mentioned those top 5 guys that your Fannium has rated highest. Is there anybody that maybe going under the radar in more other fantasy leagues that could be a potential steal?
The name that jumps out to me is Reggie Bush.
Okay.
I think Reggie Bush is going way under the radar, especially in PPR leagues, because this is a guy who a couple of years ago had a great year for Miami. He's a really, really good running back. He can catch the ball a lot out of the backfield. He's the number 1 guy in Detroit, and that offensive line isn't quite as bad as people seem to think that it is. So I think Reggie Bush potentially could have a huge season. The other running back who jumps out to me is Darren McFadden, who's been extremely undervalued in some leagues that we've seen. Oakland switched back to their normal blocking scheme that McFadden is more comfortable with, and he is always going to be a high-volume scorer. He's going to get a lot of touches in that offense. So those are 2 guys who I think are going a little bit under the radar right now.
Now, as far as running backs are concerned, how do you think Steven Jackson and Jacquizz Rodgers are going to fare?
I think Steven Jackson is a little bit underrated right now, in my mind, especially in Fannium, because I think they were projecting that he's going to get less catches than he actually will end up getting. I'll be honest, I don't think Jacquizz Rodgers is a very good running back. I've never been that impressed when I've watched him play. I know that Scott and I were talking about this last night. Jason Snelling, to me, in terms of pure pass-catching ability, even though he's not quite as fast as Jacquizz Rodgers, I think that he actually could rival him in that area. So I think Steven Jackson's going to end up taking more of the load than people originally expect. And I think that Jackson's probably a safe bet to be an RB2 starter in most leagues. And I'll be honest, I don't think I'd draft Jacquizz Rodgers. Definitely not in Fannium leagues because the pools are a little bit smaller. But even in generic leagues, I probably wouldn't draft Jacquizz.
Okay.
Wow. That's pretty damning because Jacquizz is – everybody's expecting this breakout year for Jacquizz, and you're kind of going against the grain with that one.
I'll be honest. Off the top of my head, and I'm sure if I actually look, I don't have the rankings in front of me right now, but I'm sure if I looked in the rankings I could find more. I think that he might be a bottom half of the league backup running back.
Wow.
I'm not feeling it. I don't know. I'm not really feeling it. And sorry, Falcons fans. I mean, Scott will tell you, I like a lot of your players this year. I mean, I love Julio. I'm the biggest Harry Douglas fan you will find. I am very pro Harry Douglas. I like him as a prospect, even though in the pros he hasn't been quite as good. But, you know, I'm not really feeling Jaquiz. And I got to go with what my eyes tell me, and I'm just not really feeling it. I love Steven Jackson this year. I think Steven Jackson is going to make a world of difference for Atlanta. But I think it might be a little bit at the expense of Jaquiz.
Okay. I agree with you on that. I definitely think it's going to be at the expense of Jaquiz because, well, there's only so much that Jaquiz can do. There's only so much that Jaquiz can do that Steven Jackson can't, and it's really not that much different. Both guys can catch, both guys can run, both guys can block, and Jackson's been doing all of it for much longer.
Yeah, and unlike last year, Jackson is actually good and Michael Turner was not, so putting Quiz in the game made sense for the Falcons, but probably won't make as much sense with Jackson now.
I will say one thing that Scott told me last night that I think I tend to agree with. I don't see why Michael Turner got so much run either of the past 2 years. I think Jason Snelling might have actually been a better pure running back.
The Tom Melton strategy.
I was about to say, you're not alone in believing that. So there are other people out there that agree with you. And I don't necessarily count myself as one that disagrees with you. So, yeah, makes sense. Speaking of Falcons fantasy players, are we expecting Matt Ryan to have even a better year than he did last year? I mean, his production last year, relative to where he was his first 4 years in the league, was just off the charts. Is he going to be even better in 2013, do you think?
I think that the offense is better than last year in terms of personnel. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that it happens. I think that he could help a lot from having Steven Jackson as a safety valve, because I'm just not sure that Michael Turner was really giving him all the bang for his buck that he needed when he had to check down. 20 is a little bit older, but I know that the Falcons are high on their backup tight ends. Scott and I have talked about them ad nauseum. So, yeah, I think that he could have a better year. The question for me is that going to be Ryan having a better year while all the other quarterbacks stay dormant, or is this just a trend in the NFL that we're just going to see the offenses get a lot better this year? Because to me, I don't think that the quarterback count in this league has been stronger in the past decade. There are some amazing quarterbacks that are falling in our fantasy drafts. And it's pretty stunning to see guys like Joe Flacco falling to round 13, or guys like Ben Roethlisberger falling to round 9. Really good quarterbacks who still have the skill to succeed, who have been passed up by guys who don't seem like they're going to be flavors of the month. I mean, you could say what you want about Andrew Luck, Russell Wilson, Robert Griffin III, Colin Kaepernick. All of them are smart, hard-working guys. No one thinks that they're going to shoot themselves in the foot. Barring any outside forces, they're all here to stay. So it's going to be interesting to see sort of whether Ryan's going to get better. I don't think there's any doubting that. I like Matt Ryan a lot. But whether he's going to improve at the same rate that other guys around him improve, or how it's going to deviate, is going to be an interesting question to see going forward.
Yeah, because a lot of it, I think, at least in my eyes, depends on what sort of season Julio Jones has. We saw in the NFC Championship game him having, at least from my eyes, one of the best games I've ever seen a wide receiver have. And if he's able to do that, more often than not this year, then of course Ryan is going to benefit, in terms of his production, because you're talking about Julio Jones being, possibly in that Calvin Johnson level of production if he's able to repeat that multiple times this year. What do you think, I think everybody's expecting Julio Jones to take that next leap, but exactly what sort of leap do we think that's going to be? Is he going to be up there now vying with Calvin Johnson as arguably the best receiver in the NFL?
That's a tough question, because I think that Matt Ryan is a better quarterback than Matthew Stafford, And in some ways that hurts Julio, because I think that Ryan is more likely to check down, look at other receivers, make the plays that need to be made, rather than just try to force it to him. But in terms of physical skill, I think Julio Jones is up there, top 5 in the NFL. I think it's pretty clear. And I think that the production is just going to keep rising and rising and rising as the league becomes more spread out and more conducive to that. I also think that he's lucky that in the NFC South, those are not good defensive secondaries. I mean, the quarterbacks he's got to go up against, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but guys like Patrick Robinson or Keenan Lewis and guys like, I like Josh Norman as a prospect, but I don't think he can take on Julio Jones. I mean, Darrelle Revis, that in our case is going to be interesting because we don't know if he's going to be covering Roddy or Julio. I could see a very compelling case where Darrelle takes Roddy White, although who probably will be matched up against Julio when it comes down to it. But that's not a great defensive division, and he is going to have his chance against some pretty weak secondaries. So he could put up some massive yards, for sure. I think that this year it'll be pretty obvious by the end of it, maybe sort of like how Des Bryant came of age at the end of last season, that he's a top 5 to 7 receiver in the NFL pretty clearly. But we'll see. It's all about also how Ryan progresses, and we'll see if forcing the ball to Julio more necessarily means that the Falcons win more games.
I don't really think you're forcing the ball to Julio. I think you just kind of throw it up there and he kind of gets it. I mean, it's Julio Jones. He's a beast.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that much to get the ball. You don't have to do that much to get him the ball.
I have to say, one guy in this draft class who reminds me of Julio Jones, and we're looking forward to 2014 now, and I know that you guys have a lot of college football fans down there. Dante Moncrief from Ole Miss is very reminiscent to me. He actually reminds me a little bit more of Shannon Sharp. He has a weird body type, but he has the same issues Julio Jones had in college, the questions about whether or not he can go over the middle, the questions about the hands, but he looks really good, at least when I watch him play, and he could be someone who, I was talking to Scott about it, I actually could see Atlanta make a play at him if they decide they need more of a H-back jokery type of player next spring.
And I agree with you. I could see that.
All right. I got another name to check out this fall for college football.
He plays for Mississippi, so you'll see him.
Yeah.
You're an SEC guy.
It gives me an excuse to actually watch Mississippi this year.
Oh, that's right. They're not playing Georgia.
Yeah. Since, you know, they're not good. So, yeah. So there's a reason.
Well, of course.
Okay. I've been hearing the debate about Aaron Rodgers versus Peyton Manning, and who's going to be. You know, I think the argument is Aaron Rodgers, despite not having his top 2 receivers for most of last year, in Jennings and Jordy Nelson, was able to produce on the same level as Peyton Manning, even though Peyton Manning has now added Wes Welker, and compared to the Falcons, you know, if the Falcons are number 1, then the Broncos are probably number 2 as far as their top 3 receivers go. Where do you fall on the, you know, I know you mentioned earlier that Aaron Rodgers was in the top 5 for Fanium numbers. Is Peyton Manning right behind him, or is it, you know, is there a clear gap between the two?
Peyton Manning's not far behind. In terms of the debate, it would have been a lot clearer to me if Brian Bulaga hadn't gotten injured recently, just because I am a little bit scared now about David Bakhtiari being the blindside protector for Aaron Rodgers. It's tough, though, because I also think that Wes Welker, I don't think he's going to be quite as good for Peyton as people seem to think that he's going to be. Peyton has never really been great at sort of the bullet pass Wes Welker screen game that Wes Welker has really made a name for himself doing. Peyton Manning is at his best when he's able to lead his receivers over the middle, even though I don't think he's necessarily great at keeping them safe all the time, but also he's the best at just the timing and the placement of the ball. And I'm not sure that that's what Wes Welker is best suited for, to be completely honest. Wes Welker isn't Brandon Stiltner. They're completely different styles of players. So I don't think that Wes Welker is going to have as much of an impact on Peyton Manning's numbers as people seem to think that he's going to have. In terms of who I take, I'd probably have to take Rodgers still just because the rushing touchdowns mean a lot. I'm pretty high in Randall Cobb. Even though Jordy Nelson got injured today, he should be healthy going forward. And they just have so much talent there. And I think the running game is going to be pretty big as well. Eddie Lacy, Jonathan Franklin should form a nice 1-2 punch there. But it's definitely very close. And with the left tackle injury, I mean, I couldn't fault anyone picking Peyton over him.
So final question. In looking at there's some great players out there in the Finium scoring system. Who are some of the sleepers, some of those 8th, 9th round receivers, running backs that you would recommend?
Well, I already named a couple of them. I think Darren McFadden is going later than I would expect him to go. I think that Reggie Bush is going much later than I would expect him to go. This is tough because I'm on my phone right now, and everything else is located on my phone right now, too, so I can't really check it. Actually, I can do that. You can edit that out later. In terms of quarterbacks, I mean, I said Ben Roethlisberger, someone who I think is slipping a lot lower than people should be letting him slip. Matt Schaub comes to mind as well. He's a guy who, with DeAndre Hopkins, I think that he could put up some huge numbers this year. He's a stud in my mind. At wide receiver, there are some guys who are definitely slipping. One guy who comes to mind is Alshon Jeffrey, because I think that he could catch a lot more passes. Martellus Bennett is going to help him open up the field a lot more, and he could be a good player, especially since he's getting undrafted in a lot of leagues. I'm a pretty big fan, although this sort of has a caveat of figuring out if he's healthy or not. Sidney Rice is healthy. I think he's a great pickup, especially without Percy Harvin there, because he's the de facto number one receiver for a burgeoning young star quarterback in Russell Wilson. I think put us to huge numbers this year. And the one guy who sort of inexplicably goes much lower in every other league than I pick him is Torrey Smith. Torrey Smith is someone who now, without Anquan Bolden, and granted it's going to be harder for them to clean up over the middle. Torrey Smith has always been a deep threat. He is their clear number one guy. Joe Flacco, at the very least, is a great arm, and he's a great deep ball. That offensive line is still just as good as it always was, and Torrey Smith has the speed to burn double coverage. I really like Deontay Thompson there. I think that he ends up getting the 3 spot in that receiving core. I'm a big fan of his. I think he's going to help open the field for Torrey Smith. I think Torrey Smith has a chance to be a top 15 fantasy receiver this year. Maybe even top 10. I'm very, very high in Torrey Smith.
Pretty high praise of Torrey Smith.
And I don't like the Ravens, but I'm very high in Torrey Smith.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't like the Ravens if I was a Patriots fan either.
Yeah, I'm not a Ravens guy, but you know what? Torrey Smith is someone who intrigues me. And another guy at tight end, he was better than his teammate last year, and he'll be better than his teammate this year, and that's Dwayne Allen in Indy.
Okay.
No Zach Sudfeld?
Oh, I love Zach Sudfeld. We interviewed him. He's a great guy. We'll see how he does in the preseason. I'm not going to anoint him just yet, although by all accounts, he has killed it in Patriots camp.
That's Scott's boy.
That is my boy. I wanted him on the Falcons because I saw a lot of young Tony Gonzalez in him. But
I have watched so much Zach Sudfeld tape recently, and, you know, I don't know how good of a blocker he actually is. He might be a slightly worse blocker than I'm giving him credit for, because it seems like a lot of times he gets sort of like what Travis Kelce did at Cincinnati, and we also love Travis Kelce, so that's neither here nor there. But he gets running starts on blocks. He has a lot of flexibility there. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but it's definitely something that I keep an eye on when I'm watching tape on tight ends. But his ability as a pass catcher, he's been making some really nimble catches, and he's been getting a lot of yards after the catch, too. So, yeah, I think Zach Sudfeld, Kembrell Tompkins maybe as well, are 2 undrafted free agents who could be contributors for the Patriots this year in their receiving corps.
All right. What about Aaron Dobson? I've been hearing, he's kind of stepping up to be the number 2, I guess, behind Amendola. Is that true?
I've heard Dobson could also start this year. I've actually heard that Tompkins and Dobson are sort of going for the same position. And Tompkins is a little bit more explosive, but Dobson makes some amazing catches. So we'll see which one ends up taking the spot. Gun to my head, I'd probably actually pick Dobson because apparently he has shown some great ability off the line of scrimmage, creating separation with his body, going up for big catches. I think that's what the Patriots are looking for more from that position. And let's not forget about Josh Boyce, by the way, who apparently has yet to be jammed successfully in camp. He's gotten off the jam every single time the Patriots have tried to jam him, which could speak more to how bad the Patriots' quarterbacks are, but given that I don't think the Patriots' quarterbacks are as bad as they were last year, I think it speaks more to Josh Boyce making an impact as well. But gun to my head, I think Dobson would be the most likely of that group to start with Amendola come opening day against the Bills.
All right. Well, Ethan, we enjoyed having you on. Hope to have you on a later date. Falcons will be playing the Patriots this year, so we can get some good trash talk, I guess, the week before that game or after, after the Falcons win. So
I like the idea after.
Okay. And, good luck with Fanium. Make sure people download that. Just released today.
Yeah, definitely look it up in the App Store and on Google Play, and invite your friends to join. Play around with it. It's a lot of fun. Definitely would recommend taking a shot at that.
Yeah, I'll try to check it out. All right, welcome back, Falcons Central Radio Show. We're just here to wrap up. We've talked before about this upcoming preseason game. I think we're all looking forward to it. There was a bit of news that come out of the Falcons camp today. We talked briefly about it earlier. Mike Johnson got injured. We don't know the extent of it yet, but it sounds like a broken leg, which is likely to put him out for quite a bit of time, if not the entire season. Scott, have you heard anything different?
I've heard it could have been an Achilles, but there was no, definitive, this is what it is kind of thing. But if it's a broken leg, his time with Atlanta is done. I mean, I hate to sound pessimistic, but you can't come back from a broken leg. You can, but as a lineman, it's one of the hardest things you can do. Gee. It is ow.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to seeing what Lamar Holmes can do. The spotlight is now upon him. It would be, I would feel a lot better about it. It's nothing against Lamar Holmes, but I feel a lot better about it if he had beaten Johnson in the competition as opposed to kind of having it thrust upon him. That would at least give me a little bit more confidence going into the season. But we got, another month before the season starts. And that's plenty of time for Lamar Holmes to get ready. And who knows, he might come into Thursday night and shut down Carlos Dunlap. So
that would be excellent.
Yeah.
I'm just imagining him shutting down Carlos Dunlap, and that would be ideal because Dunlap is probably the best player he'll go up against in the preseason.
Maybe the best player he might see all season long too.
I don't know about that. There's a lot of really good defensive ends in the NFC South, at least at left end. You got Charles Johnson, big fan of his. I think he's gonna have some trouble with Akeem Hicks in that 3-4. Or actually, and Cameron Jordan in that 3-4 that the Saints run. And then Daquan Bowers is going to have some fun with him. I mean, you've got three really good defensive ends playing on the left side, but mainly Charles Johnson. I think Charles Johnson's better than Carlos Dunlap. But
I forgot. I was
going to say
we do have Cameron Wake on the schedule. He is elected as well.
Yeah, so that's not exactly a fun schedule for anybody to face. I mean, you got Cameron Wake, Carlos Dunlap, all the fun players that rotate in it for the 49ers.
Whoever the Seahawks throw at us.
Exactly. Ahmad Brooks and Anton Smith. Anton Smith is our crappy running back. Alden Smith. You got Washington with Ryan Kerrigan. You got Green Bay with Clay Matthews. Buffalo with Mario Williams. You got Seattle's group. You've got Arizona, who's going to throw John Abraham out there at that spot. You got the Jets, who thankfully is a week off. So Atlanta gets New Orleans, St. Louis, Miami. Not super hard. New Orleans isn't a great one to have, but not super hard. Then they get New England. Then they get a week off against the Jets, and then they get a true week off. And then it's Tampa, Arizona, Carolina. It kind of eases into the tough part of the schedule. Like, the schedule doesn't feel like it gets hard until about November 10th, when it's Seattle, Tampa Bay, New Orleans, in Toronto against Buffalo, in Green Bay, Washington, in San Francisco, and that's oof.
Yeah. The Falcons will definitely be tested down the stretch.
Very much so. Very, very much so. It will not be fun.
Yeah.
A little bit of Jim Brown.
Yeah. So, previous statement about Carlos Dunlap retracted because Scott did do a nice rundown of all the talented left ends and other pass rushers that Lamar Holmes and Sam Baker will also be facing. So,
and it will not be fun for either one.
Yeah, so, big part of the Falcons' success this year is going to be how that offensive line handles, this little first bit of adversity and whatever may come the rest of the way.
Go ahead.
Other news that came out today, we've talked a little bit about this on past shows, is stadium talk. Apparently, Friendship Baptist Church got $20 million from...
Greed.
Well, that greed paid off because that's substantially more than the 13 and 15 that was at first offered. And so I guess...
That's way too much for a church. And I'm probably going to get crucified by these people for saying that, but...
Pun intended.
Pun completely intended.
So I guess we're waiting to see what the second church, which I don't think will be quite as much in terms of their payment, but it does look like the Falcons Stadium, the powers that be, and by powers that be, I mean the mayor, Kasim Reed, seems to be intent on making sure that the Falcons Stadium is built on that southern site as opposed to the northern site. So it seems like all the arrows, all the cards are pointing towards that happening.
That's exactly what it sounds like. And I don't like that. I don't think the south side is as good as the north side. Not even close. I think that giving anybody that much money is ridiculous. Nobody deserves, especially not a church, deserves to make that much money on a piece of property that's worth 1/20th of the value. If somebody came to you and said, hey, I'm going to give you 10 times what your house is worth, what would you do?
I would take the money and run.
And buy a better house, right?
Correct.
They said, no, we want 25 times what our house is worth. You're already offering 10.
Yeah.
Some of the thought processes are ridiculous. They don't make any sense, and they never will. But that alone was just like stupid. Stupid. Don't give them the money. Just put it on the north side where the team wants it, not where you want it. That's what happens when you have a politician trying to make a decision for a football team. Not a fan of that decision at all.
Well, I suspect somebody will not be getting your vote for re-election.
Not like it matters. I don't live in the city.
I know.
You see, Reed doesn't care what I think. Why would he?
No, I guess why would he? Yeah. So Scott, do we have any other Falcons topics we want to hit before we call it a night?
My only other quick topic is Croy Bierman. Everything that I am hearing, everything I'm looking at, it's amazing. Because they're saying, oh, he's going to be the guy who covers tight ends. Oh, he's going to be playing this Von Miller role. Oh, this, oh, that. He's this beast. All right. Let Croy Bierman finally break out. So I'm going to explore what they can do. I'm going to see what every little thing they can do to make sure he does break out. Because it's not like he's not an athletic guy. Let him, be the beer man, and he should have his own little sack dance by the end of this year.
Okay. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if I was him, I would think one up real quick because you're going to be using it a lot. He's going to be blitzing a lot. I'm looking forward to seeing it too.
Yeah, I guess we won't be seeing. You probably won't see a lot of what he's going to do in the preseason because I'm assuming Mike Nolan's going to keep his cards close to the vest, close to the chest, or whatever the saying is, about how he's going to scheme his defense. They're going to be very, very vanilla in the preseason, but I am definitely looking forward to what sort of new wrinkles he is able to roll out for Drew Brees and company come week 1 with Croy Bierman.
It will be very, very interesting to see how he actually changes his defense from year to year because some guys don't do that and you look at the different defenses and you go, what happened here? What's going on? Why are we not seeing anything different? Why is it the exact same down to the letter scheme? Because everybody can crush us if we keep doing this. So I just hope that, how do I put this? I just hope that they don't turn into a crappy defense overnight because that would make me very sad as a Falcons fan. Because they have the ability to be the best defense in the NFL, hands down. Maybe not based on talent, but if they scheme it right, very easily they can do it. Very, very easily they could do it. So.
Yeah, I agree. Mike Nolan's scheming definitely gives them a leg up.
Mike Nolan's scheme is ridiculously good.
Yeah,
and adding.
What were you saying?
Exactly. I was just saying, you go straight after. You have to go straight after these guys and attack and blitz and just kill the defenses or kill the opposing offenses.
Okay.
You got to blitz, and then that's how you mess with guys like Peyton Manning. You run that amoeba scheme all the time. It may not be great as far as run defense goes, but you can always fix the run defense. And then again, Brian Banks. I want to see what he's going to do. If he does anything. So that's the biggest part of this game that I'm looking forward to this week is actually seeing Brian Banks on the field playing football.
Definitely.
So,
yeah,
that's all I've got for this week.
Well, you can find us on Twitter, Falcons PFC. Scott and I both have our individual pages on Twitter. That's at Scott Carasik, at Falcons for myself. Check out Scott's site, Draft Falcons. Always good stuff, especially getting you geared up for the college football season. Falcons, obviously the greatest Falcons site in the world, from my perspective at least. And go there and check out daily stuff that's coming up there about Falcons training camp and preseason. We'll have a lot of stuff coming up over the weekend to recap the Bengals game.
Oh, the Bungles.
This has been a presentation of the Pro Football Central Network. For news, blogs, highlights, and more, log on to ProFootballCentral.com.